Now, sweeping new security laws for Hong Kong are set to be passed in the coming hours as members of the Chinese legislature vote in Beijing. This is the scene right now, the live pictures from the People's Congress, which is continuing to run on. The security bill itself, the Hong Kong security bill, that is expected to pass very comfortably, and its effect will be to make it a crime to undermine Beijing's authority. It could see China's National Intelligence Agency set up offices in Hong Kong for the first time. We'll keep across, obviously, the situation there, but in Hong Kong itself, the bill has triggered renewed street protests. Also, the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has said that Hong Kong should no longer qualify for special US trading status, as it has ceased to maintain a high degree of autonomy from China. In just the last few hours, the LegCo in Hong Kong, the Legislative Council, has been adjourned, in fact, because of these tense exchanges between the pro-democracy camps and the establishment politicians. Two pro-democracy lawmakers were removed during a debate on a bill that would make it a criminal offence to disrespect China's national anthem. Now, we had these pictures for a moment ago. You probably heard that applause echoing in the hall as well. We understand that the National People's Congress has now voted through the Hong Kong security law. The details of the vote we may get in due course, I'm not quite sure, but no one was in any doubt that this vote would take place. When it is applied is still slightly up in the air, but it could be as early as next month. But just hearing now that the Hong Kong security law has been passed by the National People's Congress in Beijing. Well, I've been speaking to Jimmy Lai about this. He's the founder of the Hong Kong newspaper The Apple Daily, one of the new legislation's most vocal critics. And I asked him, in fact, first of all, to give his reaction to the statement by Mike Pompeo, in which he said the US would stand with the people of Hong Kong.
Rhetoric is not enough. Action is what will make the Chinese hesitate to impose this draconian law on us, because if this law is imposed on us, that will be the end of Hong Kong. Because this would destroy the rule of law and freedom of Hong Kong. Without the rule of law and freedom, we won't have the international financial center as it is. Because without the rule of law, there will not be protection for people to do business here. The only way they can do business here is to bribe the official who have the power to control them. And without the rule of law, we will lose the trust in the business community and making the transaction costs a lot more costly.
Right. Is there anything that the likes of Carrie Lam, the chief executive, or John Lee, who's secretary for security, I mean, he's saying that this is to protect the overwhelming majority of the public who are law-abiding citizens. Carrie Lam says this is just about a small number of potentially terrorist acts. It's not across-the-board legislation.
Well, if only a very small number of so-called terrorists, why go nuclear on it? You have 30,000 policemen. Can 30,000 policemen control a small gang of young people?
Well, I mean, that's certainly a question out there. And I don't dispute there is an international outcry from many quarters about this legislation. But an outcry is one thing, isn't it, Jimmy? Action that supports that disapproval is difficult to find at the moment.
Well, I don't think it's difficult to find. The most important action is from President Donald Trump. He says that if China imposes the law on Hong Kong, there will be serious consequences. I believe President Trump is a man of his word. He mostly he does what he says. So we are expecting really serious and draconian sanctions from the US.
So it's very clear messages, warnings from Jimmy Lai there. And just to reiterate once again that in the last moment or two, the National People's Congress, gathered in Beijing, has voted through the so-called Hong Kong security law, which is expected it could come into play as early as June. It may be a little bit later in the year. This is exactly as Jimmy Lai expected and feared, I think it's fair to say. The BBC's Robin Brandt is in Shanghai. He's monitoring this as well. I asked him a little bit about the messages coming from Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State in the United States, of course.
In terms of what President Trump will do next, and he's promised something by the end of the week, now that we know Mike Pompeo has before Congress given this classification, or rather rescinded the classification that Hong Kong retains its high degree of autonomy. The key thing, I think, for President Trump is trying to strike the balance in terms of what he is trying to do between exerting pressure, sending obviously a strong message to Beijing about Hong Kong, its people and its future, but at the same time not do anything too punishing to the businesses that are there. They are immense, of course, among them huge and significant American banks, business investors that are there because they see it as a safe place to operate, a place under which they will be treated fairly. It gives them a gateway to the mainland. It gives, of course, as well, business and the Chinese government here on the mainland a gateway to the rest of the world, a gateway to the rest of Asia. So the balance for President Trump may be not to spook American investors, global investors too much, but I have to say, you listen to Mike Pompeo in terms of saying that he believes Hong Kong no longer has that high degree of autonomy. I mean, that is dead and buried as far as Mike Pompeo and presumably President Trump is concerned, and that can only mean measures by the US that are going to have, certainly in the short term, a negative impact on Hong Kong and its standing.
Robin Brandt on what is, under any circumstances, an historic moment, as I say, once again, as the Hong Kong security law has been passed by the National People's Congress in Beijing.